Good afternoon. Today we are doing 10.6, problem solving 2 and 3-dimensional shapes. And we are on page 433. On your mat today, we have two columns, 2-dimensional shapes and 3-dimensional shapes. If you have shapes around your house that you want to cut out and put on the mat, go ahead and do that. And when you're done drawing your shapes or putting them on your mat, if you cut them out, you're going to draw lines to match the 2-dimensional shapes to the 3-dimensional shapes that they look like. So I have on the 2-dimensional a triangle, a circle, and a square. And on my 3-dimensional, I have my sphere, my cone, my cylinder, and my cube. So I'm going to go ahead and match up our 2-dimensional to our 3-dimensional. Our triangle matches with our cone. Our sphere and our circle match up. So our circle here matches with our sphere down there, and our square matches to our cube. We don't have one to match up with our cylinder, but if you find flat 2-dimensional shapes to put over here that match up with a 3-dimensional shape, go ahead and add them to our mat. When you're done, please turn the page. On page 434, we are to identify the 2-dimensional or flat shapes, trace the circle around the square, circle the other flat shapes, identify the 3-dimensional or solid shapes, trace the X on the sphere, and mark an X on the other solid shapes. So that's a lot of information and directions. So we're going to do step by step. So first it says identify the 2-dimensional or flat shapes. So we're going to go ahead and find the 2-dimensional flat shapes. No, that's a 3-dimensional. No, that's a cube. No, that's a cone. Yes, that's a circle. Yes, that's a square. No, that's a cylinder turned on its side. Yes, that's a triangle. No, that's a cone turned on its side. Yes, that's a triangle. Yes, that's a rectangle. No, that's a sphere. So we found our flat 2D shapes, and now we're going to trace the circle around the square. So go ahead and trace your circle around that square and circle the other flat shapes. So now we're going to go back to all our flat shapes that we identified and circle them. So here's our circle. Here's a triangle. Here's a rectangle. Here's another triangle. And that's all our flat shapes. Now we're going to identify the 3-dimensional or solid shapes. This is a cone. This is a sphere. This is a cylinder. This is a cylinder. And this is a cube. I think I passed this one. This is also a cone. Now our next step is to trace the X on the sphere. So we're going to trace that X over the sphere. And now you're going to go and mark an X on all of the other solid shapes that are 3D. So here is our cylinder. Here is our cube. Here is our cone. Here is our cylinder. Here is our other cone, and then we had our sphere. Good job. Now turn to the next page. For this page, you will need a red coloring crayon or pencil or a marker, and a blue coloring crayon, pencil, or marker. We are on page 435, 435. For this one, it says identify the two-dimensional or flat shapes. Use red to color the flat shapes. Identify the three-dimensional shapes or solid shapes. Use blue to color the solid shapes. So we're going to first identify all of our flat two-dimensional shapes. Triangle, circle, hexagon, square, rectangle, triangle. And now we're going to take our red crayon, marker, or pencil, and we're going to go ahead and color those shapes that we just identified with red. Mrs. Hall just went out of the lines. And we have two more. Triangle and our rectangle over here. All right. Now it says to go ahead and identify the three-dimensional solid shapes. So we have a sphere, a cube, a cylinder, a cone, another cylinder, and another cone. Now it wants you to take your blue crayon, colored pencil, or marker and color in the three-dimensional solid shapes. So we'll start with our sphere up here. And because Mrs. Hall is using a marker, they're going to end up looking like all flat shapes with flat sides and curves. So we want to know that the blue represents the three-dimensional solid shapes and the red represents the two-dimensional flat shapes. And we have now a cone. And we have a cylinder. And then our last cone that's on its side. Excellent, good job. So now we can look at our shapes and we know that the red represents two-dimensional flat shapes and the blue represents the three-dimensional solid shapes. Good work. Go ahead and turn the page. And my marker went through, but you can see that we have two blank spots, top and bottom. And number 3 up here says, Draw to show what you know about a flat shape and name that shape. So it could be any flat shape that you know. So go ahead and choose what you want to draw. I personally like a three-sided, three vertice triangle. And that's my flat shape that I like. And then number 4 down here, it says draw to show what you know about a real object that has a solid shape. Name the object and the shape. And I love baseball, so I'm going to draw a sphere, a baseball sphere. And I know that a baseball has curves and it can roll and it has a three-dimensional feel of the ball. I hope you enjoyed your math today. See you tomorrow.